You're only supposed to view your size. You're either not supposed to care at all or only view it from a perspective of shame.
And how did you get into everything?
I moved to New York City in order to pursue acting. That's was my main thing I wanted to do. Specifically musical theater, which is funny. Coming from a hyper masculine world, the fact that I wanted to do musical theater was an issue with people.
I bet.
But I loved it and it was something I wanted to do. But then I got to New York and I remember that one of the first things the casting director told me, they were like, you're not gonna get cast in any show. And I said, well, why not? And they're like, you're not gonna be able to build a resume because of your size. You can only play lead role villains. You'll never be in the ensemble. You can never be an understudy. You can never be, I was too different from everybody else. They're like, unless you're the focus of the show, and they're like, and they're not going to give you a lead role with no resume. That's how I kind of got into film, because it was a little different. Film, they can cheat your height a little bit, but still, everyone in film's tiny.
It
blew my mind. The amount of roles I lost that they're like, hey, they really liked you, but the person you're playing opposite was 5'2", 120 pounds. So
that's going to be an issue.
You're not going to be. The few things I did start doing successfully was I did some commercial work and whatnot. I had my agent one day. It's like, hey, Target wants to see you for a casting. And I'd done stuff before, but for insurance and ESPN and casinos and just anywhere I could be the big guy screaming at sports. That was the one thing that I booked a lot. But it turned out it was for clothing. And it was the first time Target was using a plus size guy in any of their ads. I somehow booked it. When I went there, they had nothing that could fit me. That was another thing. I went to the casting.
Seems to be the case. It's happened to me too, at a shoot and I was gonna ask you, is that normal? Why is that normal?
So normal, especially brands that are expanding their size. There's one, and I hope to work with them one day, so I'm not gonna name drop them, but there's one client I have been to a casting for 7 times.
Yeah.
Every single time they do not have anything that fits me. And every single time they're like, we think we have something this time. Yeah. And they hand me the same size. This is a 34, not a 32. And I'm like, I haven't been that since I was 13 years old. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I started off with a lot of the specifically big and tall brands. And then I've been kind of going ever since.
How have you navigated all that? I find it pretty difficult. It's kind of like an uphill battle of with the castings, with the sizes. How have you been able to handle it and actually create success from all of that?
My career started changing when I stopped trying to make myself or seem smaller. It takes a lot, especially being us growing up as big straight dudes. Yeah. It's not something in the masculine world that is ever talked about. You're only supposed to view your size. You're either not supposed to care at all or only view it from a perspective of shame, where you have to be I need to lose weight. I'm trying to get better. Yep. And the only time we would even get a pat on the back from our fellow straight guys is when we were doing the right thing. Oh, I see you in the gym, big man.
Getting it in, bro.
Getting it in. You getting it in? It's a process. It's a process. Just stick with it and you'll get, and it's I've been working out my whole life. Yeah. I'm still this size. I've been this size. I've never been an inactive person. It's just kind of the way our bodies naturally are. But it wasn't until I started modeling that I started voicing kind of my own insecurities I had about being big my whole life.
Taking your shirt off and shit. I still struggle with that. I see you do it and I'm like, man,
I hate it. It's to this day, it's gotten better. But when I first started taking off my shirt in public, it's baptism by fire. I didn't like it. I didn't feel comfortable doing it. Yeah. I just knew it felt important to me because I didn't grow up seeing big guys. I wore a t-shirt in the pool until I was 26. It wasn't and then I turned 18 and everything got better. No, I was a full grown adult and in relationships and still going to the pool with my girlfriend and been I had the excuse that because I'm super pale, I'd be oh, it's because of the sun.
You don't want to burn. Yeah.
I don't want to burn. And it's no, I didn't care about that. I was just terrified of doing it. Have you gotten to the point where you if you go to the beach, do you start taking off your shirt now? Or are you still?
I do now. I think that's within the last year though. Something that you said that resonated was shame and how it's viewed. I think growing up, that's been huge. When I was 10 or something, I was put on Jenny Craig, all those diet stuff.
Dude, I did all. What did you do? I did Weight Watchers.
Yep, I've done that.
I drank Slim Fast for ever.
Done that too.
I did the Atkins in
I've
the
not
South.
done that.
I did Atkins. I did South Beach. I did every diet pill you've ever imagined. That was my big thing was diet pills. I was like taking them by handfuls trying to lose weight, like Hydroxycut, Xenadrin, Ally. I think my stomach is still fucked up to this day for this. Sorry, I know this is family friendly. I think
It's sad to think of now, right? Because it's like the reason why we went that route is because of like what our environment was saying we had to be or how we had to look, right? You know, that's why I brought up you taking off your shirt, because I have seen you do that on social media, and I will say that's part of the reason why I even feel comfortable doing that.
dude, that means a lot.
No, seriously, and I wanted to make sure to tell you that, because I don't know if you found it difficult to do that. I don't know where you were at with it, but I did want to mention that that has helped me feel more comfortable in my body.
Well, thank you, because that's the reason I started doing it. I was not ready to start going shirtless, especially in modeling. Because that's the thing, especially getting into modeling, models are expected to do like nudity or lingerie like right away.
I was
You're
so
just
surprised about that.
Immediately, no matter your size.
Get in your
They're like,
boxers. I'm like, what?
I know, right away they want you to strip down because, you know, they're not supposed to have any insecurity. You're just a palette for the designer or whatever. So I knew that it was something I had to do. It breaks my heart when I go to a beach or a pool and I see a kid who is maybe not super young, but especially around that like 12, 13, like puberty age, and I see them wearing a shirt in the pool. It breaks my heart because I know why I was wearing it, because I was terrified people would make fun of me. I was ashamed of the way I looked because I wasn't correct. I wasn't that like
You didn't look like-
Hercules manly body that we're supposed to have.
Yeah.
Our choices were either to slim down, lose weight, you know, or we had to go the athletics route. It's kind of like, and then we had to decide like, are we going to be the big funny guy or are we going to be the big mean bully dude? Because those were our options.
Only two categories you could be in. Huh?
I know, and most of us went like the funny guy route because I'm like, I still want people to like me.
Yeah, still want to enjoy life and not be an ass.
And it's, if I can get to just a couple kids where that's not something they feel like they absolutely have to do, because especially even now with younger generations, I feel like there's this huge emergence of this like hyper masculinity, this toxic masculinity that like I spent my whole life trying to escape, and seeing it start to come back for young guys is heartbreaking. And I've spent, you know, most of my career trying to figure out how I can stop that from happening. Yeah. And I think all I can do is just kind of show an alternative.
Showing up on social media too, the way you do is super helpful. And I think if I was a young kid back when I was 10, if I did see people that were big like me, like being confident online, showing themselves online, not caring, that would have made a world of impact. I'm 28 now and I'm having to work through all of that now.
We were living with shame that maybe we didn't really have to live with, because the only people who would come at you and try to shame you for it were people that were terrified of their own insecurities and their own size and their own issue. Oh, it's all projection. Yeah. Just our body type is like some dude's worst fear and worst case scenario. It sucks to walk around like that.
It's like you're a walking trigger essentially for some people.
Oh yeah, and some of them get, especially in athletics and the gym world, they're so hyper focused on their physique and all that. I did sports growing up. You did sports professionally. It's not like we're not active, strong people.
And I appreciate this conversation because a lot of guys don't sit down. I've started to like force people in my circle to try to have more emotional conversations as I've left football and started, you know, healing, discovering myself past who I am, past an athlete. So conversations like this are really appreciated, and conversations I look to have with other people in the future and continue to. But, you know, I did want to say thank you, because you do continue to just show up. I know you struggle, but you continue to show up, and thank you.
Thank you, man. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you doing what you're doing. It's not easy for us to have these conversations after being told we were not allowed to. Not only that we weren't allowed to, we didn't deserve to. And
if you did have it, we were shamed completely out of it.
And it's tough, even in our space, like something I've even noticed in the collective. It's like, I know I'm very conscious of the fact when I'm in a place talking about, you know, privilege, talking about, you know, diversity and representation, I'm very aware that I am the big straight white guy in a room. But because of that, I feel like sometimes you're afraid to speak out because you don't want to step on anyone else's toes. You don't want to be the guy complaining when you feel like people are going through worse things than you. But it doesn't make
your
what
feelings
you
not
went.
valid, you're still valid. You're still valid in
Exactly.
every right. And
No, exactly.
that's important. And I'm glad you did mention that, because a lot of my friends growing up were white. And it's so interesting to have this conversation with you, because that's something that they continue to bring up. And they're like, am I valid to, have feelings, essentially? So yeah, thanks for opening up about that, bro.
I mean, and that's the thing. You don't want to get into the whole like, oh, poor white guy. It's more than that. It's being a big straight dude. You want to be an ally. You want to be someone who is helping uplift other people. And sometimes it's weird to even think that you need uplifting yourself. And that's why I feel like conversations like this are so important, because it's like, no, you can still be struggling. No matter what has happened to you in your life, you're still allowed to feel like you're struggling. You're still allowed to feel like you need help, you need community, you need support, especially in a hyper-masculine world. That's something that a lot of us are afraid of. Asking for support is such
a death sentence.
It was like the worst thing you could do growing up was saying, hey, I need help. When you were in football, you were O-line or D-line?
O-line.
So O-line, your whole job is to support, AKA the star of the show.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that has been interesting to realize. That's like, you don't get credit for that.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? And you're just there.
But you're the
throwing
first
your
one
body.
blamed.
If anything
Listen,
goes
I'm a
wrong.
Giants fan, and I curse the O-line every
y'all
day of
need
my
some
life.
help.
I'm
Y'all need some
screaming
help.
about the offensive line. You're expected to be there to support people, to do your job, and no one's saying thank you. No one's doing anything. But the second you slip up a little bit, everyone's right on you.
Definitely.
To make sure you know that you messed up.
And it's been interesting to translate that into my actual life and see it play out. It is difficult, and it's something I am continuously healing through. So,
And I imagine, I mean, I haven't been in a sports locker room since I was a teenager.
don't even get me on that.
So I can't even imagine the kind of hyper-masculinity nonsense that starts evolving in those situations.
It's interesting because looking back, like a lot of the people who presented very masculine on the field, when we're in the locker room, it's the complete opposite. There's people like that. There's also people who hide parts of themselves and they only let it come out in the locker room. And that's when you start to see different sides of men, as opposed to just being tough and strong and non-emotional. While there were very toxic conversations, don't get me wrong, that's inevitable, but it was interesting to also see other parts of guys come out when they felt safe in these locker rooms.
It's funny seeing like groups of dudes get together, because we become more vulnerable in the fact that we start showing more of our personality and who we are, but there's always that guise of, these are the rules though. We can all have fun and be individuals inside these rules, but don't start acting like a wuss. Don't start acting like that. And like, I hope for next generations they can be a little more free of that.
I do see that in the next generation of like men. I think they're changing what it looks like, what it feels like, and what a man is.
I think people are afraid, like, we're in a world that's been ruled by straight men forever, straight white men in particular. And I think you see a lot of talks about masculinity right now, about how like no one's a man anymore, no one's this. And it's kind of like, no, you can still do all those things. You could play football, you can chop wood, you can go fishing, you can go hunting, you can do all the manly stuff you want. We're just asking you don't be racist, homophobic, transphobic, bigoted, toxic while you're doing it. That's not a crazy thing.
No.
Do whatever you want.
No.
Don't be a piece of garbage while you're doing it.
Exactly. And it's been interesting to see the difference. I think the more that people continue to speak out, the more conversations we continue to have,
Did you see evolution? Like, I feel like we're in such a time of change. Did you see things changing in the locker room as you played?
My younger brother, he just got to school at Princeton. He's playing football there. And the way they handle things, their generation is so different than when we were in there. They're a lot more free, they're a lot more open. They do talk about their feelings. Like, it's so interesting because they have so much more of a healthy environment to nurture and grow at such, pivotal ages.
So I had a conversation with a buddy at a bar who I hadn't seen in a long time, and somehow it turned into a conversation of us both talking about our therapists. And I was just like, how evolved is this? Two grown straight dudes at a bar talking about therapy, when that was something that, not even that long ago, 10 years ago, you would never catch me dead speaking about. I would never admit to go into therapy. I would never do anything. And now it's like,
therapy's awesome. I go to therapy every week, man.
Dude, you need it.
It's needed, man. It's needed.